You ready, Keith, for us to start the meeting?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're going to call the meeting to order. If everybody could introduce them, please, for the record. You got it? Awesome. All right, guess we're good. We're going to just, any changes, additions to the agenda? All right, the only thing we're going to add is grant funds for salt ash cultivation. That was for an ARPA grant. We're going to discuss that. And then I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from September 18th.
I need the last
Yeah, I read them. They're good.
guest
Cool.
security.
They're
Oh, you need to log internet?
September 18th. I have
Plymouth
them from the last
guest.
meeting here. Right here. Is that what the ones you're talking about? October 16th?
Okay.
You're talking about these, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. Second.
Okay. Huh, this is, says approved minutes from September 18th, but these are the October 16th meetings. Oh, yeah, good. Make a motion to approve the October 16th minutes.
You signing that copy?
Sure. That will,
Move forward meeting
yeah, yeah,
agenda.
yep.
Hi.
We'll be going in just a second.
I can introduce
Yeah.
myself.
Absolutely. So, Marie is our guest this evening to speak about Money Brook, and I'm grateful Marie has taken her own time to drive out to Plymouth and share with us. So,
I'm Marie Levette-Caduto. I'm with the Department of Environmental Conservation, and I am the watershed coordinator for this region. So I work on all kinds of rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, wetlands, basically all the water resources in the region. So I've been involved with this brook since Tropical Storm Irene. So I'll go through some of the stuff that kind of orient everybody to what's been going on, what the conditions are that I'm aware of. And Jay's sent me some updated stuff and talk about what we have done in the watershed to try to improve conditions and where things have gone. So as soon as we get the Zoom link up, we'll go for it. So I'll just dive right in then. So what I wanted to do was just kind of give you an overview of the watershed itself and what we're working with on this, what the extent of the storm damage has been. And I don't have a whole lot of pictures from this storm. I got lots of them from Irene. What we did for assessing the watershed as far as figuring out what's going on and what we might be able to do, and then talk about what we already have done as projects to try to help with the sediment issues. I don't take credit for all the photographs. A lot of people have worked on this brook and send me their photographs, so and including Jay, which has been helpful. So Money Brook watershed. Money Brook is a really small brook compared to a lot of the stuff that we work on. The whole watershed area is only a little over 1 square mile. And the whole length of the brook, that main stem, the longest branch that you see on that map, is not even 2 miles long. So it's a really small brook. The landslide area, and I don't know if you can see my cursor here. I can try to make that something more visible. So this area here, the major landslide area, is only about 8 acres. But 8 acres is a big landslide. The issue with Moneybrook is that it's really steep. When you drive down the highway and you see those truck signs that says slope, it's like 7%, 8% is really steep. Moneybrook's like 18% slope. It's an incredibly steep brook. And which means it's really fast moving and powerful when it comes down that slope. So the black line outlines the watershed itself. So any raindrop that falls within the black line is flowing into Moneybrook. And when you look at it in the bottom left corner, the top of Salt Ash Mountain kind of is the tip of the watershed. And so up there, it's coming off at about 3,120 feet. And when it hits the flats down by the barns, it's at 1,160 feet. So that water plummets almost 2,000 feet in a mile, 2 miles. So when you think about that kind of force coming down and you have these really heavy storms, that's what's happening. A lot of water is plummeting down a really steep, short brook and land at flats. As it comes down the slope, it hits the flats and explodes out in all areas. And what we call that, where a steep hits the flats and goes out like that, it's called an alluvial fan. And anything within that whole triangle, the Black River coming back to the brook, is in a very hazardous location because of all that force. So these are Tropical Storm Irene pictures. You've probably seen all of these at some point. But that's what the flats looked like following the storm, when the helicopters went by and photographed the state for us. And those are all town pictures that the town provided when the assessment work was being done. There have been a number of assessments that have been done on Moneybrook now. DEC covered a couple of them. V-Trans covered a couple of them. So between this, there were 3-4 different assessments that have been done to look at Moneybrook and how it's impacting the Black River and the lakes. And that's how it's impacting the lakes, as you saw. Again, these are Irene pictures, but it didn't look any different after this storm for sure. The bottom left picture shows how much sediment comes out of Moneybrook and hits the Black River. And you can see the difference in the water quality as the brook comes out. And on the right, on the bottom, you can see what was done to the brook after Irene. Right, the big machines came in and just trenched the brook. And I'll talk about the impacts of that in just a bit. So these are the ones that Jay sent me just recently. And it looks, I have to say, it looks just as bad, worse, same as it did after Irene. The slides up there are 1,000 feet long and about 250 feet high. It's a massive scale, and I haven't climbed up there since the spring or fall after Irene. I've had a new knee since then, so I haven't gone back up there. So, but these pictures look pretty much like it did. When you're looking at all the assessments that have been done, so we did one, as I said, through ANR, DEC, that Lake Rescue Association wanted us to do. We did that. Kristen Underwood and George Springston are basically professional landslide folks and hydrogeologists. V-Trans did assessments because of the highway and all the impacts to the highway. And then we did another smaller one, to do some project work on site. And this assessment, the picture on the bottom right, was when we were all up there doing those assessments. And that's what the slope looked like right after Irene. As part of that assessment, Kristen looked back at the history of flooding through here and the flood damage that's been done. So all of these floods, 27, 38, 73, 76, 11, and now 23, have all flooded and poured rubble out onto Route 100. So this isn't anything new. It's been going on for a long time. And it's probably not, I'm gonna just be totally blunt about it. It's not gonna change going forward. As I said, the brook is short and steep and fast and carries a lot of debris with it. And as it comes down and tries to go fit under that bridge, which is too small for what's coming down that brook in a storm, this is going to happen. And it's probably, even if the bridge were bigger, because it's the alluvial fan where it's naturally going to spread out, it's to be expected that this is going to continue to happen with the floods and with the more water that we're getting in our storms now. The conclusions that they drew from that assessment, the landslides have been going on for a long time. The flooding of the road is going to be a recurring problem. The development within the alluvial fan is certainly a concern. I mean, people are living there, and that's a very dangerous place to be, because these probably aren't going to, this situation is going to continue, and it's likely because of climate change and the more water that we're getting in each of these storms, it's potentially, going to get even worse. So, just to have it in everybody's head that this is what's going on. Coarse sediment, this level of storm, and this was after Tropical Storm Irene, which was the largest storm we'd had in a very long time. It was estimated that we'd be getting these 3 to 4 times per century. And I think in the past 12 years, we've learned that that's probably a significant underestimate of what we're going to be getting. And the fine sediment, the stuff that moves, and that's a problem once it reaches the lakes, is going to be at that same kind of frequency. We can expect that to be. What we've done about it over the years, we've done all these different assessments to try to wrap our heads around what's going on. Are there things that can be done? What does it mean for the road, the bridge, and certainly the folks who live at the bottom of the hill? We've provided funding for assessments of the Black River itself, of Money Brook, and the other brooks in the region that are also contributing sediment to the lakes. Buffalo Brook and Patch Brook all have issues as well. So Money Brook is likely the major source of a lot of the sediment. However, both of those brooks also have sediment discharges in these storms, as I'm sure you see when you drive over them after a storm. They're just as chocolate brown as everything else. We provided funding to Lake Rescue Association a while ago to do outreach to landowners about, property management and making sure the lake properties themselves are managed well and not causing erosion. We've done an assessment of Round Pond. We've done a sediment core study of Lake Rescue and Round Pond to see what the sediment history is. And then we've done scoping work to look at, what are the projects, what might be done to help with the sediment. We've actually gone up there. It was after Irene, and attempted to plant some things along the base of the slope. The concept being if you can get some vegetation down at the bottom to grow up and start catching the sediment that continues to fall, it would help at least trap some of the sediment before it hit the brook and carried it down to the lakes. It didn't work. They had to, number one, they had to carry all the plants up that hill to get them to the slopes, and then the slides are so unstable, and with each storm, so much debris comes off of them that it wasn't a good investment. It was a good attempt, but they just could not survive that kind of a slope. We have done some on the other brooks, on Patch Brook and on Buffalo Brook. We have done work to prevent or to stem erosion from those two brooks coming in. And the most that we have done are projects on referred to as the flats, the Pingree Flats. And I'll talk about what we've done there. And that has been the most successful so far. When you look at the picture on the right, after Irene, as I said, the big machines went in and just reamed out everything that was trapped in the brook and piled it up on the edges. So each side was bermed with big high blockages to the water. And when you do that, the water, as it hits the flats, instead of being able to spread out on the fan and drop the sediment that it's carrying, it's forced. This is looking straight down from the bridge towards the Black River. And it forces the water and that velocity of the water to carry everything right straight down. It can't get out, it can't settle out. So the first thing we did was remove the berm on the side of the brook that is along Pingree Flats. We didn't remove the other side because somebody's living there. Right? We didn't want to threaten that house more by removing the berm. So we left the side, the north side, basically of Money Brook, and we removed the berm on the south side. And that worked. The next spring, the water rose and it came out onto the flats, as you can see here, and it ran through the field. And what that allows, it allows the water to slow down as it spreads out. It allows it to drop some of the sediment load that it's carrying on the field and prevents some of it, certainly not a lot at this point, from reaching the Black River. What we followed that up with, well, actually what that did over time is it restored what was wetland. That field had formerly been, before agriculture, that field was wetland and it had been drained and used for agriculture. So allowing the water to re-access the field allowed that wetland to revegetate, to come back and create wetland habitat. What's in front of my boot there, which you can't really see, is long strands of toad eggs and wood turtles. So those are, good species to have in your wetlands, so your wetlands functioning. And it turned the field, a lot of that field, back into wetland, which can absorb sediment as it comes down. The other big piece of that was to protect that so that it couldn't go back to agriculture and couldn't go back to being drained. So the state purchased the development rights to all that blue area of the field. We purchased that from the Pingrees, and they kept the barns out so they can still be there and use those. And the rest of it is permanently protected as floodplain. So it's now floodplain protected, it's wetlands, and the brook and the river are required to have a minimum of a 50-foot vegetated buffer along it. And as the river moves, which it will do through the floodplain, it's always going to be changing location. that 50-foot buffer has to move with the field. So wherever the river goes through the field, there's going to be 50 feet of vegetation on each side of it. And that's helps trap sediment as the water spreads out. It slows the water down, the sediment can drop out and be maintained on the field instead of continuing onto the Black River. You can see the lighter green is wetlands, and the olive green is hydric soils, which is basically soils that used to be wetland or should be wetland. So all of that area you can see is where we want the vegetation to grow up to wetland to help trap sediment. And the image on the right is the conserved area now. So we tried to overlap that as much as possible. So the things we have done and the investments that the state made, we did all the work on the Pingree Flats, and we actually used it as a site to train people on how to do wetland restoration and how important that was. So the Pingrees were great, and they spoke to the whole group about what it's done for the wetland and for the field. We've conserved the land. The easement project identification, the lake rescue work, and then all the assessment work. So, and this isn't all of the assessments. As I said, V-Trans funded a lot of the work on the brook as well. So DEC, the clean water funds that I work with, over $300,000 have been invested in Money Brook and the Black River and trying to understand and deal with this issue. And so after Irene, it looked one way, and after this storm, you can see how much vegetation has grown up on that field. And it trapped all that vegetation, that wetland trapped a lot of sediment. And it doesn't seem like it much happened there because there was still so much sediment that reached the river and the lakes. But each location that we can do these kind of projects, each one kind of is a relief valve for the river to spread out, slow down, drop sediment. So the more we can find locations along the river now, because there's not much we can do on the slope of Money Brook. So we're looking now kind of along the Black River and where we can do more of these projects to catch the sediment, trap it on the land, and keep it out of the river and the lakes. So that's what I wanted to show, and I'm willing to answer questions or comments or whatever. I just wanted to kind of give an overview for everybody.
During Irene, the brook overflowed and went south over Pingree. This time we went north.
Right.
Has that changed your thinking about solutions or remediation or anything like that?
No, because it's each time, and if you look at that, at the LiDAR maps, so we have images and I can show them if you want. The lasers that hit the ground and show elevations. When you look at those maps, you can see that the brook has been in different locations over time. At one point, it came down and went behind the old Pingree house and then crossed the road farther. I'm getting my farther south. I'm getting my directions mixed up here. It crossed farther south. And other times it's going to continue to change location depending on what's in its way on the way down. And we certainly can't predict that, and it just depends on how it's hitting the bridge and how it's overtopping the bridge and what the soils are around it at any given point. Did the same thing in Reading. Last time it went south of the Reading Bridge, and this time it went north of the Reading Bridge. So it's hard to know.
I'm Mitch Tucker and I live in the house. at the
Yes.
bottom. Right, I don't believe you've been there to see what happened to us. Number one. When they built the new banks higher, they did not build them higher on our side. And we worked for 11 years. The state gave us permission to put so much fill in.
Yeah.
Which still wasn't fine. This time, somebody determined that leach field going across wasn't working. And contractors that were working there were told to put the brook down to the original spot. So it's going straight through the bridge and straight down to the Black River, which is why there's so much sediment going down the river now. That whole area that was purchased by the state is not being utilized. And I can show you if you'd like.
Yeah,
to come.
I walked it after this storm.
I would really enjoy having you come and see exactly what both things, we were surrounded from both sides.
Yeah,
Because it came from Tesh's house and came right across and got Frank's field, but it totally surrounded our house. And it's still there.
yeah,
The river, nothing has been done. Every time it rains, more of that silt, which is now 4 feet higher than it was before, our whole backyard.
mhm,
Every time it rains, that washes down because there's nothing holding.
Yeah.
So if you could come and visit sooner rather than later.
I'd be glad you could.
So I talked to Joe Casella, who rebuilt Donnybrook after this storm. He said that one of the reasons why it rerouted was because there were 4 huge pine trees that fell all in one location. And that essentially created a dam, and that's what forced it to go in a different direction. So my question is, we talked about the 50-foot riparian buffer when it's within the wetlands, but what about the border of how it comes down and what we're doing with the trees alongside of how it flows currently?
On the upper side of the brook.
Right.
So most of the time, when you go up there, I mean, there's trees all over the place, right? Everything that's falling down those banks. And those banks are going to continue to fall until they reach a slope that is stable enough and gradual enough for vegetation to take root and not get wiped out. It's called the angle of repose. Probably heard that in high school. But until that angle is achieved by the bank continuing to fail, all the trees on it and everything else on it are going to continue to fall in. And that's to be expected. That's a natural process. And up in the upper part of the watershed, that's a good thing. Right, as those trees fall, as I said before, they gather and they block sediment and they form dams, not just to water, they form dams to sediment. When they cross the brook and they're in the brook, they slow the water down. As that water comes plummeting down the hill, it slows it down, it backs it up. So it doesn't reach the bottom with as much force. So in the upper watershed, having all those trees in there is a good thing. It's keeping sediment up, it's keeping the water, it's slowing the water down. As it reaches the bottom where it's going to be near the highway, at that point, removal of the ones that are crossing the brook or in the brook is usually a good idea, because then if they move and block the flow under the bridge, then that's only going to exacerbate the flooding problems. So as that happens, and I'll say that V-Trans has the right to manage the brook in that stretch to protect the highway. So they can do that work. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but if they're up there and, you know, they're within, I don't know what the distance is, the river engineer needs to determine that, but they can be removed. Yeah.
So, could I trouble you, if the audience can't hear, on the Zoom, do you mind coming up and speaking into the microphone? Thanks, Fran. I'm curious about what they're saying.
It looks like to me what Casella did, sped the water up down through there now, not slow it down.
It's pretty straight right now, as I looked at it recently.
Is that going to get repaired? So it slows it down?
I have to leave that in V-Trans's hands.
What?
I might be missing something, but all the stonework that they've done now, that deep trench looks substantial, depending upon what might come down.
Mhm.
The real issue, as far as I can see it at any rate, is the inadequate area for the water to get past the highway. It'll continue to rip the highway out the way it is now until they decide to open it up a lot further from south to north, even if it means almost along the bridge, to allow for a lot of water to take its natural path underneath. That alluvial fan you talk about should happen once it hits the flats, not as it hits the highway and then goes over the highway. That disrupts the whole thing. If they don't change how they allow the water to get under the highway, nothing else is ever going to change.
I am in agreement with you. And I'm not trying to point fingers. You know, our infrastructure, our bridge infrastructure all over the state is way undersized.
Well,
Our culverts are undersized, our bridges are undersized. They weren't designed for the volume of water that we get today. So, you know, when we got it once every 50 years or so, it's one thing to deal with. When we get it every 10 years.
It just seems
it's
like
another
false economy to do this little patchwork on the highways rather than accepting the fact that things have changed and it's more likely to be happening in a lot less time. You know, 3 times per century, that was great a century or 2 ago.
right.
Not today.
And V-Trans is fully aware of it. And after Irene, the Rivers program and the state fought FEMA for well over a year because what FEMA will pay for is for you to replace this with exactly the same thing. And that, as we know, doesn't work. We need to replace with it bigger. And it took a good year of fighting with FEMA for them to allow the state to do that and to upgrade versus just replace like with like. So that in itself is a huge win, because what that means is over time, and we redid the bridge standards and the culvert standards. So going forward from Irene and that decision, now all bridges and culverts have to be sized to accommodate the high flows. So they have to be upsized. So the problem we're facing now is that so many bridges and so many culverts need to be upsized. You know, we don't have the state budget transportation wise to just go out and replace all the bridges that are undersized. They will get upgraded as they rotate through the, you know, redo cycle, but that bridge itself is actually fairly new compared to a lot of bridges. So the likelihood of it being replaced anytime soon, your guess is as good as mine, because, you know, condition wise, it's in good shape, and they're not gonna replace a bridge that's in good shape when we've got lots of them that are in terrible shape.
You're calling it a bridge, but it's a culvert, right?
It's,
It's not a bridge.
yeah, it's a box culvert. Yeah. It should be a bridge, no question, and it should be significantly longer.
Do I need to come up there?
It'd be helpful if you don't mind. Thank you, Tish.
Let me just turn this off. Stop sharing.
Is there a measurement for where the jurisdiction of V-Trans ends along Moneybrook and where Rivers and Streams picks up?
I can't answer that. I don't know the answer to that question. I know they have significant authority to manage up and down of the bridge to protect the infrastructure, but if there's a specific distance, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that is 100 feet from the culvert, because they told me that they could not put fill up on our side because it was too far.
Okay.
And they said we can't go more than 100 feet.
Even if the bridges are resized to handle the flow, it's not going to affect the sediment though.
No, it's not. And the sediment is, as I said, the sediment discharge is going to continue until those slopes stabilize enough to start growing things on. And that's a long-term condition.
Can it be helped along?
Not with state funding. I mean, I can't even imagine the millions of dollars it would take to stabilize those slopes. I mean, 5, 10, 15. It's massive. It's absolutely massive up there.
Now, you mentioned leaving the trees in the channel bed up high.
Yep.
Because it would slow down the water. It was my understanding that the trees fell into the brook, and that's what caused the diversion of the water to go north and destroy Tessa's house and half of my land.
And all of my.
And all of us. So I don't see how leaving trees in a brook, the brook is helping things. It's actually causing dams. And once you have an uncontrolled dam, the water's going to go wherever it wants. If you have a brook that's properly designed, it's going to stay in that channel.
That's the misconception, that we can design a stream channel. We can't.
I think it's a misconception to say that you could let random trees fall and let the water go wherever it's going to go randomly.
As I said,
Does not sound like good.
above the infrastructure, it makes sense, and we do remove trees. For the most part, as you know, the trees farther up, what they're going to do as they move through the channel, it's a small channel. It's amazingly small brook when you get up there. And you know, it's total boulders. So as something comes down, it's not like it's on the Black River and the trees are going to pick up and flow down the river. That's not what's going to happen in Money Brook, because they can't. There's not room for them to just flow down unless they're towards the bottom. And so removing those that are towards the bottom does make sense.
Water that's up there follows a path, brook. Has that changed at all, or is that staying consistent through these two storms?
It's kind of always changing, and I've looked at the aerial photographs, and it has changed.
But it can't change an awful lot.
Not a lot.
Because that is the low spot.
It's the southern bank is mostly ledge. It's the northern bank where all the mass failures are, which is alluvium, but you know, it's sand and gravel and boulder. The southern bank is very steep. but it's mostly ledge. And I would love to be able to sit here and say, we can go in there and fix things, but as I said, I mean, it's 1,000 feet long and 250 feet high, and it's a massive failure. That's not gonna get fixed. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's the situation.
So what happens to all of us who are living there?
You certainly, as I said, we're looking for sites. And if you have a field that you're not using and you're along the upper Black River, there is water from Money Brook, that's a problem. There's also a lot of water coming down the Black River that we can work on as well. And we can certainly work on the stretch between Money Brook and the lakes. And if we can find those locations where we can do that kind of mitigation, allow the floodplain to get flooded, allow the wetlands to redevelop. There's a lot of wetlands right there, and that's absorbing a lot of water and maintaining a lot of sediment there. So the more we can do that all along the river and along the streams that feed the river, the less water will get to the river, the less sediment that will get to the river.
That still doesn't answer my question.
It doesn't. And there are only so many things that can be done, and that's why FEMA has buyout programs and houses that are in really hazardous locations. I know that's a horrible thought, and I can't imagine doing it myself. But that's why those programs are available, because we're in a different situation than we were 50 years ago.
But we don't have the time. We're in our 80s.
The time for...
We don't have time to wait for another storm to come, totally destroy everything. We need to have something, at least help to get the boulders and get the dirt out, and maybe do a Trump thing and build a wall. That could be done on the back edge of the lower property where it busted through this last time. A wall could be put up there similar to what's on the Notch Road, because that worked fine and it's still working fine.
So is this something we ask you about, or is this something we go to V-Trans with, Marie? Or is it a combination?
I think it's probably a combination. I think that the state has funded a new program, and it's called the Flood Resilient Communities Fund. And right now they're focusing that funding on buyouts of houses that were not necessarily completely destroyed, but those that are in hazard's way. So there is funding for that. That funding can also do that floodplain restoration work, that wetland restoration work, so to help mitigate the level of flooding and to maintain sediment. So, we're developing those programs now, and the Vermont Emergency Management Office is in charge of that, and they're going around and trying to find those locations, find folks who are interested in getting out of harm's way. So those are out there. I think between V-Trans and Vermont Emergency Management and Vermont DEC, we're all certainly in communication a lot, and there's teams that are working on that. So, I mean, I will definitely bring your situation up. I know what you're facing.
I want
been by.
I want contact. Haven't heard a word from anybody.
Yeah.
And we can't go on.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And we didn't get enough money from FEMA to do anything.
One of the things that has been done is that Previously, FEMA buyouts covered 75% of the appraised value, the pre-storm appraised value of the house. In this program, because people can't accept they can't do anything with 75% of the value of their home, especially
Well,
with
our set
housing
value is
prices now.
less than 75% anyway right now.
And so now they're doing it at 100% of pre-storm appraised
How
value.
do I get on the list?
I can hook you up with that.
Is that 100% of the appraised value?
The pre-storm appraised value,
Assessor's value.
the appraised value,
Well,
fair market value.
Fair market value, not.
If the appraised value is at 70% of market value, which it is now, right, Michelle? Close to, then we would have to get, if they're going at 100%, they'd have to add 30% onto the assessed value.
So it's now 100% of fair market value, pre-storm.
Fran, did you have your hand up?
Is the material up there a sellable product?
You got me. I don't know anything about that. I do water, not soil.
Take what you say, sell the material to offset the cost.
You don't have to, just come to our house, you can have all your fun.
Well, I mean, it's not like we haven't considered, looking at, doing something up there, especially post Irene, when this all first really revealed itself and caused all the damage. Between the slope and access and the extent of the problem, it's simply not feasible.
What's the estimated cubic yards that got dumped this time in the river?
This time, I don't know. I can send Jay the assessment, what came out of the geological assessment that Kristen and George did. I can send you that. And it's got all the numbers in there on how much sediment moved, how much we were up there literally with tape measures and measuring the boulders that moved, to get a sense of how much movement there was, how much volume of material came down the brook after Irene.
In 2011, they had a huge beaver dam on the top. I remember that.
And I have a feeling that was,
busted out and then it all came down.
because when you hiked up there, and I hiked up there, I think it was the April after the storm, there was still some snow on the ground. And when you got to the top of the slope where it started to flatten out, the brook, I was on the south side, which is very steep, and you were standing on the edge, and the water at that point was probably 20 feet below where you were standing, and the debris caught in the trees was another 15 feet above my head. So there was like 35 feet of water coming over the edge of that slope after in tropical storm Irene. So it was just an unbelievable massive
When the
amount.
Black River came down from the village, the debris at the edge of our lawn was 11 feet high in the trees. That was coming that direction, and another brook was coming the other direction.
And one of the issues that doesn't really get considered in large storms like that is it happens on the Connecticut River, like where the Black River enters it, and it'll happen on the Black River here, where Money Brook comes in. As the water level of the river, the larger river, rises, that water acts like a dam, right? Because the water coming down Money Brook can't get out into the river because the water's so high. And that slows the water on Money Brook, it backs it up. And that adds extra depth because the water that would normally be able to flow into the Black can't get into the Black because the Black itself is so high.
Are there grant options
For
to fix this? The sediment running off and everything, because I know there's two different issues. Obviously, the volume of water coming down, but the pollution, if you will, to
The funds, the clean water funds that we have can do that floodplain restoration work. There's nothing else to do at the base of Money Brook, because we have taken pretty much that whole field and done that. So as I said, what we need are other areas along the Black River itself to do that. So that will help the sediment that's already reaches the Black River, so it doesn't continue to be carried down through the lakes. It will also, if we're doing it upstream of Money Brook, it will also help lower the level of the Black River, right? So the more you can spread out the water onto the land as it's flowing along the river, the less volume there is downstream. And it releases slower, so the Black River itself won't get as high. But we need to do that a lot. I mean, each location is a pressure valve, and you need a lot of those to really make a difference in the entire watershed. So the more we can do that, and we do have funds for that.
But it's 5 or 10 million.
Not 5 or 10 million.
So there's no other, I just hear.
Yeah, there is no source of funding that we have that can take on this project and stabilize it. It simply doesn't exist.
Nature. 5 million isn't that much money over 10 years. Not that much money.
If I had control of the funding, I would be glad to help. But you'll have to talk to your legislators about that. We have a significant amount of clean water funding that the legislature has provided, and that's statewide. And the fund that we have available for this type of work that's not focused on Lake Champlain on an annual basis is $5 million. And that's statewide.
We'll just take one shot and give the rest 9 years away.
The state has $100 and some odd billion that the governor wanted to spend on infrastructure, but the legislature saw fit to spend it on the home lead program. She voted for it. So there you go. They had plenty of money.
Seems like the state could take the funds that it's thinking of using to addressing floodplains and wetlands and recognize the fact that if you did nothing, the water would find its own floodplains and the wetlands would be allowed to work. The only issue is infrastructure, primarily people's private property and homes.
Right.
So if they didn't spend money banging their head against the wall, trying to alter a floodplain, and instead offered people real good money for their properties, where they would feel good about selling it, that would cost a lot less in the long run. Floodplains are and wetlands are.
And private property owners understandably want to protect their private property. And there are berms all over the landscape that they're not protecting a house or, a barn or anything like that. They're protecting an open field. And yet the river does not have access to those, so in some ways we're our own worst enemy, because we are the ones who have encroached on those floodplains and are preventing the rivers from accessing those floodplains. We have built in the floodplain, we have put our houses there, which obviously we then want to protect. We have put our infrastructure. I mean, you think of the downtown Ludlow and all those businesses that are underwater every time this happens. That should be floodplain but the waterways are where we build our villages. It's where how we traveled, it's how we got our energy at that time. And it's understandable that we're there, but as this climate that we're now facing, it's simply not a good place to be. And we can't change where our villages are at this point. So we continue to protect them in those locations, which means we have to do the other work kind of between the villages if we want to maintain our villages.
Can I just add on?
Yeah.
That one thing we recently learned out, and the town is going to be sponsoring a buyout, doesn't mean the town pays for it. We have one in the works through the state, and the state is paying 100% of appraised value. We'll have an appraisal done at the time of the incident. So it looks like the state program is really good. They have 2 avenues, and it's federal funding. So from what we've seen so far, if people have questions about homes that they think they should get out of, their possible eligibility, they should come see us about that.
Because the town has to sponsor the buyout. So that's your first avenue.
What are the next steps for the state in their planning for the brook? Is that work that they did in July and August finished for now?
As I said, what was done there was done for Route 100. And I'm with A&R, and I'm not involved in that, and I don't know what where those decisions came from. So I'm afraid you have to go to V-Trans for that information. I don't know.
Yeah, I spoke with a geotechnical engineer from V-Trans, and she said that there was a project, but I didn't get the information.
After Irene, they developed a bunch of plans on how they might mitigate Moneybrook to protect the road. I don't know if those ever moved beyond the concept stage. So I remember I was at some meetings where they were discussed, and the projects that they were considering were discussed, but I have not heard anything that was moving those forward.
We've got the physical damage to structures and roads, but we've got sediment going all the way down the Black River. And it's impacted the recreation value, the environmental value, the fishery value. Has anybody in the move to put a number on these things to see maybe spending $5 million upstream isn't so bad? Are you doing anything like that?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, as I said, this mitigating it at the source of Moneybrook, I think everyone agrees that it's not feasible to do that.
Can you please look at it? What this gentleman said, can it be looked at, please?
I can make that request. Because I certainly understand the concern, and the lakes are a huge resource to everybody in the region. So I can make that request.
Looks like we have a hand up in the audience, Senator Clarkson.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for making Zoom participation a possibility. To go to the question about what the action steps are, Marie, thank you. You're, as always, a great resource for all of us, and we're very grateful for your expertise. I think Tesha and I can speak. One of the top priorities, obviously, for this session is coming out of it with an agreement to a plan to pull together the key partners, the Army Corps of Engineers, A&R, V-Trans, Silver Jackets, our federal partners and our state partners working together to create a plan for the next 10, 20 years to begin mitigating the challenges we face. And then also figuring out how we're going to raise the money, which is gobsmacking. As Marie said, just on Moneybrook alone, you're looking at, just the thought of mitigating that stream all the way up. The cost of that is just, it's mind-boggling. So, but we need to get our partners together, which don't always play in the same sandbox together, but we're going to have to, because the feds have the deeper pockets. we need to start, we have a resiliency fund, but it's inadequate. It's only $10 million. We need to identify a source for a serious amount of money that is going to be invested in, and we need to create a plan to mitigate, but it's the whole state we have to look at. So we are very aware that this is our top priority for the session. And many committees are going to be working on it, but we probably should have begun this in greater, with greater effort after Irene, and now, we're definitely, that this is our top priority for the session. Thanks.
If anyone does want to get in touch, Jay certainly knows how to get hold of me. I think I have a few cards I can leave on the table. Please do get in touch, and I'm willing to come out and visit folks and see what the situation is, and try to assist with making connections to the right folks who have other pockets besides just the Clean Water Fund. So.
Well, I certainly have a much better understanding of the problem. Thank you so much for coming out here today and speaking with us. It's really helpful.
Glad to be here.
Good.
Great.
All right, awesome.
I'll pop myself off.
We're gonna go to some other fun business, John Morgan's. Feel free
I
to
might
stick
leave
around.
you for that one.
One thing that we still have to do, we discussed the paving bid at our last meeting, but we didn't formally approve it, I believe. There's a copy. You have a copy, Keith?
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. We're doing it. So we approved this last time. Is there any discussion around it? I'll make a motion otherwise.
A large part of it was the grant, isn't it, that Rick got?
Very excited. All right, good. It's approved.
I second it, yeah.
Next order of business is to review and modify the short-term rental registration form. And I believe the only thing we had to modify was the removal of the recording fee. Is that? Okay. Sorry?
I highlighted a couple of the things on the next one.
Yeah.
And then just administrative, I put the Knox box, the actual. Knox
Oh,
box,
the number?
so people know.
Okay,
And then on the back page, the phone number, that's all.
perfect.
That's one time, right?
Well, is that coming off?
Because we don't record.
We're getting rid of the recording fee.
Yeah.
And that's the model that you have to use.
Yes, people always ask, but now that it's on there.
I'll make a motion to read.
Frank's here, right?
Yep.
That's her, that's Margot's phone number, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You got the main call? Go ahead, second did you make a motion to that?
Yeah, just got a second.
I'll second.
Unless you want to make a
I'll
motion, I'll second.
There's nobody here. Rick's not here. He usually likes to second everything. Get his name in the papers. So you got
The next item, to approve 2 business credit cards for the town of Plymouth. And are we changing companies?
They're gonna be.
M&T?
Yeah.
Okay. And one is for you, one is for Elaine, or one is Larry?
Larry and, yeah.
Oh.
It'll stay in the same.
Okay. Awesome. Yes.
Just wondering, you said you're approving the paving contract, you know when the paving will take place?
Rick said it was supposed to start at the beginning of this month now.
Don't know.
So soon.
They've been around doing like making some measurements and stuff.
Because some of the roads have eroded, you know, they're just, you know, patching.
You go over Tyson, I'm gonna go right because that hamper, you know, the.
It's all, yeah.
Saw that? Yeah, lose your front end in there, right? That's just like, what is, I'm coming up with, I'm like, oh. it's okay.
Hopefully they're starting soon. I mean,
I just
they don't got
brought
much
up
time
the-
left.
Well, they took they had a big thing down by, again, I think, over my.
Yeah, they rolled out the end of the bridge there and everything
Yeah,
on
that would
Dublin
be
Road.
right
So that's gotta be, I think that's ready to go. We just gotta get the truck there. Where? On the end or towards the bridge part? Towards the bridge, yeah. Yeah, it's swollen, it's getting worn. Oh, well, there were a bunch of big trucks going up today. And I don't know if Sean walked his excavator down. He was walking it on the road and I don't know if he went all the way down. If he did, that's probably why it's torn up.
A lot of trucks went over with the patch broke.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jay.
It's okay. Good question. I need a second to approve the credit card.
Rude.
Okay,
Second.
awesome. What else?
That was a long time coming. We talked about that like 2 years ago, didn't we? Getting the credit card. I got it.
All right, number 8, review and possibly approve the NEMRIC contract. And it looks like it's much less than it had been. This is for $54.25 and we used to budget $10,000.
Yeah, it says that's the whole annual cost. How did they cut it that much?
I don't know.
Was that part of payroll coming out of it? Do we know?
That's all their services, they describe, that's what I asked for.
There's no alternative.
Oh, wait, this is NEMRIC support, not Cynthia's contract, right?
This is support for the software.
Yeah, that's what it looks. Software support agreement. Is that, do you know if that's what we paid last year? Can we table this till the next meeting? We'll just find out. Is that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So that could be 5,000 extra.
Yeah, yeah. You okay with holding off on this?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm not a big fan anyway. Okay. Software support agreement. Yeah, oops. Don't sign that one. Another dog thing next?
It becomes, right, so in effect in about 11 days. Right.
17, yes.
Okay. Is there anything that has to be done or anybody can do between now and then?
No, just nobody nobody brought a petition or anything, but we're not gonna meet until like December again, so. I
Okay.
thought good just to mention it.
Awesome.
We can hear the rest of the meeting going on, guys.
And then we had a request from SA Cultivation, the dispensary, Al. He applied originally for $7,500 in grant funds. And then didn't have a plan in place, but he contacted us. We went over this at the last meeting, requested some assistance for the work that he's done. We said we had $3,850 left in uncommitted funds, and we said we would review that. I did go over and look at the work that he had done, new vinyl siding on the front. They enclosed the windows. I think that's probably part of the dispensary, what that has to look like. I'm not as familiar with that as you are. And then they put roofs over those and he's going to hang a ski chair. So he fixed it up quite a bit. He supplied receipts in the amount of close to $8,000. They're just slightly over, and those are the receipts if you're curious, Keith. And we said that we had $3,850.
Right, we were gonna give him the rest of it, right? If he approved it.
Yep.
His license just got renewed by the state. He can keep on growing.
Did you get emails for that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same. If we can't deny him the money if he meets the criteria. So,
So then that's yeah, go ahead, Margot.
Sorry, can we go back to the dog ordinance again?
Yeah,
I couldn't hear. I did, is the dog ordinance on the website now? Yes. You didn't understand.
There's a copy here if you'd like it. Yeah, all right, all right. Good.
are these his hours?
No, he hired, 2 people. Their names are on the invoice.
The guys who did the work?
I think it's Matt and their names are on they're the ones that came up with the bills. Is it Will? I don't know.
What is that? 17? Right, yeah, it's like $1,700 for materials, $1,800.
Yeah, there's a door, $1,300 worth of vinyl siding, big channel. There's materials for building those little roof things where the windows used to go.
So you want to give them all the money? Or some of
$38.50
it?
is what we had uncommitted. So that would be the max. And he spent 8.
We could give him material, pay for his materials. You want to do that? If you don't want to give him all the money.
Yeah, I'm okay with the $38.50, but that's what we got.
But then that's all, that's it?
Yep.
So if anybody asks for else applied, we'd have nothing?
The application period's over.
Oh, okay, well. Yeah, so what do we do with the rest of it if we don't give it all to him?
Just goes to ARPA funds. We use it towards something else.
Was there, did we already make a motion on that at the last meeting? That we were gonna.
Give it to him if it
Yeah,
probably met the
stuff like
criteria?
that, you going out and taking photos. and
Yeah.
stuff.
I did go over and look at it.
I think we already made a motion.
Okay,
And he gets it.
all right, yeah, we're good. That's good.
Yeah, it's right, it's actually in the minutes. that you
Oh,
just
awesome.
signed.
All right, saves us the trouble. Great.
Yeah.
It's good to review it anyway. That's good to work. And then, mail-in warrants, and we'll do those. And we're gonna go into executive session to discuss a couple of things, and we'll probably do mail-in warrants unless anybody wants us to do those here.